Section 5.4 is a quick little section about local variables, but this is a pretty important piece of using functions. And so, give you just a couple programs to look at. We just got 2 slides for this section, but we'll just start out by defining. So, local variable is any variable that you are assigning a value inside a function. So, x equals 10 or whatever. So that value in that for that particular variable, it's been assigned and it can only be used inside that function. So eventually you'll see we'll pass things through and all that kind of stuff, but for now it can only be used inside that function, and you'll get an error because if you try and use it outside the function because the interpreter doesn't know what you're trying to do. Okay, so when we're talking about it, the scope of this, that local variable can only be used inside the function it's created. So let's take a look at an example. So this little bad local program. We've got a quick setup here. So here's the definition of the main function. So here's our main, and then we've got another function here called getName, and then we're calling main down here. Now you notice when we go to main up in this section right here where it says getName, we are simply calling this getName function. So it's going to come down here. It's going to come back down to line 7. It's going to run this particular line, ask for name. That's our local variable here. And we take an input from the user as a string, you can see. So you're just going to type a name in. It's going to record it. Here, it's going to be defined here. But then we go back. We're not returning any values here. We're going back. And once this is over, it comes back down, picks up where it left off, and it's going to print hello name, and you'll see this will cause an error. It doesn't know what's going on. So let's take a look at that. All right, so here we go. So we have our next line to execute right there at line 2. So here we go. I'm going to hit next. You'll see we're just doing our definitions here, setting these little babies up. So we're now going to run main. So we come back here, we're executing this. So you can see the very first thing it's going to do is going to go to get name. So I'm going to click next, drop down here. Here we go. If I get name, here's our name input. So when I click next, again, it goes down to line 8. Here I'm going to type in my name. I hit submit. And you notice that it is stored now. So in the get name function, we have the variable name, and our value is a string defined as Jeff. We have no return value. Eventually, this will be important to you, but for now, that's totally fine. And now, when I go out of this, I'm going to click next, and you'll see now here I am. And it's going to print hello name, and boom. Oops. Here's our name is not defined error. So this is our local variable. Okay, so that's it. We can't do anything, and that's it. So you notice there's no output here. It doesn't actually do this. So how might you fix this? Okay, so with a local variable, there are lots of ways, but you could do something. We'll just get rid of this. Comment that out real quick. In fact, I'm just going to take this and let's just go ahead and put it. I'm going to copy and paste it down here in this particular get name function, so that now when I read the name in and I'm getting this user input, it will go ahead and print, and then the program will end. It'll send it back, but it will end. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And I'm going to walk through this very quickly because you saw this work before. But now, when we get down to this one, here's my name being asked. And so I'm going to type in Jeff, hit submit, and it's stored right here. And then you'll see the next line, line 9 to execute, hello, just like we've done in the past. There's my little hello Jeff, and that's the end of the program. Pops back there, but that's it. So that's a quick little look into local variables. Let's look at one more, another example. So let me switch back over here. And you'll see that you can actually use the same name in different functions, and you'll have different values. This is terrible coding practice, but it doesn't cause any necessarily confusion because the functions are independent of each other. So let me show you what I'm looking at here. So if I switch this over, so here we go with this little birds program, and we've got a few different functions here. So we've got main, of course, and then we have Texas and California. Those are our function names. And you'll see with each one of these, if you take a look at line 13 compared to line 19, we're using the same variable name. And the interpreter has no problem with this. It's just fine, but because they're local variables. They're only defined in here. They're only used in here. But it's just bad coding practice. So you want to stay away from stuff like this. And you'll see this will work just fine. So you can see the birds in Texas, there are 5,000. There are 8,000 in California. So let's just see this run very quickly and we'll take a look. So here, I'm going to just scroll down because it's just a comment at the top. So I'm going to scroll down so this piece shows so you can see each step. Oops, I'm going to roll up a little bit. And when I click next, here we have Maine, there we have Texas, now we have California. And then we're going to call Maine and it's going to walk through this. So here we're going to say, hey, we want Texas to run if you're following the arrows here. So we want Texas to run. It drops down here. And we're going to define birds. So now inside Texas, birds is defined as 5,000. And you'll see on line 14, boom, Texas has 5,000 birds. Great. Now we kick it back to this. So you see red goes back up there. Now we're going to call California. So it's going to kick down to here. And it will now define birds as 8,000. California has, and look at that, 8,000 birds. Okay, so you want to steer clear of this. This can be confusing later on, if you get into some bigger programs. So you still want to maintain good coding practice, and this is not it. So the way you might change this up, let's say, I mean, there are lots of ways, obviously, but if we were to just modify this very simply, you could do something like this where you just gave it a, I don't know, something like this, where we said, oops, it's not Texas. Make sure you define the right one. So we could say Texas birds, and then of course we'd have to change this, down to Texas birds, and then we could change this to California. So we could do something like this, okay? And it would help just isolate those, even though they were independent of each other as just standard birds, and it worked just fine. It's just not good coding practice. So be careful of that as you're going through and defining variables. You want to really, really still stay with our same coding practices of keeping them defined, knowing what they are, making them easy to understand what those variables are. All right. So that's pretty much it for local variables for now. So let me know if you have any questions as you go along.